Hi, Andrew from SACS, and welcome to video number 4 in our 10 video sequence on psychological illness and how it relates to psychometric assessment. So in this video we'll be talking about why people are as they are, and we're going to suggest that there's the nature and nurture component of why people are as they are, but we have historically vastly underestimated luck as a driver of why people are as they are. So just to explain this, the nature component is things like intelligence, cognitive ability, and personality. Now we know from twin studies that if you get identical twins and they are separated at birth and they've never met each other, then what you will find is that their cognitive ability correlates quite highly. But as they age, their cognitive ability gets more similar. So it's like their genes assert themselves more as they age. Isn't that fascinating? We know that personality is heavily genetically determined. You'll get arguments on this, and I believe that it's probably about 70 to 80% genetically determined, similar to cognitive ability, but plenty of people think it's more like 50%. Just depends on which studies you look at, I guess. Now, everybody knows about the nurture side of things, so as you grow up in life, you develop certain skills, you have certain experience, and you develop certain attributes like your style and your values and your attitudes and those kinds of things. But what we have vastly underestimated is luck. So let's talk about the effect of luck. So as genes form, there is a randomness in how they form. And this might sound kind of theoretical, but it can be very significant. So in fruit flies, we know that fruit flies tend to turn left or right. And in fact, what you get is if you've got genetically similar fruit flies, one will turn left and one will turn right, even though they're genetically identical from a genesis point of view. In other words, they're sharing the same gene pool. But what happens is that as genes are forming, they don't always form the right way, or they don't always form the same way. Now, this is really important because for years we have wondered why, let's say, two identical twins, one gets schizophrenia in a very significant way, hallucination, paranoid delusions, all of the significant stuff that you expect with schizophrenia, and their identical twin sails through life without a problem. Well, we know that there's a strong genetic driver for schizophrenia, and what may well be going on there is that the second one was just lucky. They just didn't get the combination of genes to trigger the schizophrenia component. Some people say it's epigenetic, that they didn't come across the environmental triggers, but we now know that luck has been vastly underestimated. So are you psychologically stable? Well, if you come from a long line of people who are psychologically unstable, you've got a much more likely chance of being psychologically unstable. But also, if you are not, maybe you're just lucky. But let's talk a little bit about nurture. So when we talk about this question of nurture, I always think of Steven Pinker's wonderful video, I think it's still on YouTube as a matter of fact, called Nurture Myth. And what he looks at is parents beating themselves up to try and make their kids better. It's actually not easy for parents to make their kids better, but they could certainly make them worse. Because if you provide them with trauma, if you provide them with abuse and neglect, that can have an effect on them. But in fact, even more scary is that genetically, that causes their kids down the track to be less cognitively blessed, more anxious, and a bunch of other characteristics. So it's hard to make people better, but it's certainly easy to make them worse. In the next video, we'll be looking at the question of stress and trauma at work and what can be done about it. To join us, click on the link near this video.